the first thing witnesses noticed wasn't the tape across her mouth. It wasn't the belly showing through her coat, or the way she fought against hands that wouldn't let go. It was the man standing 15 feet away, watching like a man reads a newspaper, watching like a man waits for a bus. His pregnant wife was being forced into a car in broad daylight on a busy city street, and Lim Sang-hoon stood perfectly still, not frozen in shock, not paralyzed by fear, just still. And when the car door slammed shut and tires screeched away, he finally moved, not forward but back. One step, as if making space for what came next. One small thing before we continue. If this kind of story makes you lean closer instead of clicking away, do me a favor, subscribe. Say something in the comments, even just a word. Tells me I'm not telling these stories alone. Alright, back to the story. November 14th. 3:47 p.m. Corner of Gangnam-daro and Banjunsa Road. The afternoon was ordinary until it wasn't. Alana Williams Lim had been shopping for nursery furniture. Pale yellows and soft grays. Nothing gendered, nothing presumptuous. Just hope in fabric form. She was 8 months pregnant, moving with that careful waddle expectant mothers develop, one hand always resting protectively on her belly. She emerged from the shop carrying a small bag of fabric samples when she felt it. That animal instinct that bypasses logic and screams directly into your nervous system. Someone was watching, not the casual glance of passers-by. This was focused, deliberate, hungry. She turned. Across the street stood a woman in a crimson suit. Fitted, expensive, the kind that announced wealth without words. Her hair fell in a perfect black curtain. Her expression was unreadable in the way that great poker players and dangerous people share. Park Ji-woo. Alana didn't know her name. Sang-hoon had never offered it, and she'd never pushed. But she knew what this woman was. A chapter her husband had sworn was closed. A part of his past he'd promised had no claim on their future. The woman smiled. Then she started walking. Not casually, not slowly, with purpose that made Alana's heart kick against her ribs. Sang-hoon? Alana whispered, turning to where her husband had been standing. Right there, just moments ago, waiting while she browsed. He'd been checking his phone, his usual composed self. He was still there, still standing, still watching, but he wasn't moving. Ji-woo crossed the street with the confidence of someone who had already won. Behind her, a black Mercedes pulled to the curb. A man stepped out, thick-necked, expressionless, the kind of person paid not to have opinions. Mrs. Lim, Ji-woo said, her voice like silk over steel. We need to talk. I don't know you, Alana said, backing up until her shoulders hit the shop window. No. But you sleep in a bed I helped buy. In a house I helped build. Yivo stepped closer. You carry a child that exists because I let him go. So yes, Mrs. Lim, you absolutely know me. Alana's eyes darted to Sang-hoon. He was closer now, but not close enough. His face showed nothing. Not fear, not anger, not even surprise. Just that maddening, impenetrable calm he wore like armor. Son. Her voice cracked. He met her eyes. For one terrible moment, she thought she saw something. Regret? Calculation? But then it vanished, replaced by that same still silence. Ji-woo grabbed her wrist. Alana tried to pull away, but the thick-necked man was already behind her. His hand clamping over her mouth before she could scream. She felt the adhesive before she saw it. Duct tape, silver and brutal, sealing her voice inside her throat. People were watching now. A delivery driver stopped mid-step. An elderly woman gasped. A teenager lifted his phone. Recording? Calling for help? But no one moved, because they didn't know what they were seeing. Was this a domestic dispute? A misunderstanding between family? The lines were too blurred, the situation too ambiguous, and Seoul was a city that minded its business. Alana thrashed, her hands instinctively protecting her belly. The baby kicked hard as if it could sense the danger. Tears poured down her face, soaking into the tape, but she couldn't make a sound. She looked at Sang-hoon. He was 10 feet away now, close enough to act, close enough to stop this. He didn't. His hands hung at his sides. His expression remained neutral. And when Jiwoo forced Alana toward the open car door, when her pregnant body stumbled against the frame, when she took one last desperate look at the man who'd vowed to protect her, he turned his head away. The door slammed. The car pulled into traffic. And Lim Sang-hoon stood on that sidewalk for 15 more seconds before he finally moved. Not to chase. Not to call for help. But to walk calmly to his own car parked 2 blocks away. The witnesses would later tell police they thought he was in shock. Trauma sometimes freezes people, they said. He was probably terrified, they reasoned. They were wrong. Sang-hoon wasn't frozen. He was thinking. 3 years earlier, Alana Williams met Lim Sang-hoon at a charity gala she'd been dragged to by a friend. She was 42, divorced, childless by circumstance rather than choice, teaching literature at an international school in Seoul. She'd stopped believing in fairy tales around the same time her ex-husband started believing in his 26-year-old yoga instructor. Sang-hoon was 47, immaculate in a tailored suit, and so controlled in his movements that he seemed to occupy space differently than other people, like he'd negotiated the laws of physics down to more favorable terms. "You look like you'd rather be anywhere else," he'd said, appearing beside her with 2 glasses of champagne. "I'd rather be home with a book and tea that doesn't cost more than my shoes." He smiled. A real one. Not the business smile she'd seen him use with other guests. "I own this hotel. I could have tea brought to any room you'd like." She'd laughed. "That's either the smoothest or the creepiest line I've ever heard." "Both," he admitted. "I'm out of practice." That honesty hooked her. Not the wealth, not the power, the crack in the armor. They talked for 3 hours. He told her he'd built his fortune in real estate and private equity. She told him she'd rebuilt her life after watching it crumble. Neither lied about their scars. Their courtship was slow, deliberate. Sang-hoon didn't rush. He called when he said he would. He remembered small details, how she took her coffee, which poets she loved, that she was allergic to lilies but adored peonies. "You're suspiciously perfect," she'd teased him one evening, 6 months in. "I'm not perfect," he'd said quietly. "I'm just very good at deciding what matters. And I matter? Profoundly." The proposal came a year later. Simple, private, perfect. The wedding was small, her family, a handful of his business associates, no one from his past. She'd asked about that once. "No old friends?" she'd wondered. "No one from before?" "I left that life deliberately," he'd said. "I don't invite ghosts to new beginnings." She'd accepted that. People reinvented themselves. Seoul was full of them. The pregnancy was unplanned but welcomed. At 44, Alana had stopped hoping for children. The positive test felt like a gift from a universe that didn't usually give second chances. Sang-hoon had held her that night, his hand on her still flat belly, and said 3 words he'd never said before. "I'm genuinely happy." Not just happy. Genuinely happy. As if happiness usually came with conditions or fine print. The first 6 months were perfect. Morning sickness, swollen ankles, midnight cravings. All of it felt miraculous. Sang-hoon attended every appointment. He read parenting books with the same focus he gave business contracts. He turned one of the guest rooms into a nursery with cream walls and hand-painted stars on the ceiling. But around month 7, something shifted. Small things at first. Phone calls he took in another room. Longer hours at the office. A tension in his shoulders that never quite relaxed. "Is everything okay?" she'd asked one night. "Yes. Are you sure?" "Alana." He turned to face her, his expression gentle but firm. "I'm handling it. Trust me." She did trust him. That was the problem. Then came the watching. It started subtly. A woman across the street when Alana left her Pilates class. The same car parked outside their building 3 days in a row. A text message that appeared on Sang-hoon's phone while he was in the shower. "She's beautiful. The baby will be too." When she'd asked about it, he'd deleted it without reading. "Wrong number," he'd said. "Son." "It's handled." That phrase again. His shield against all questions. 2 weeks before the kidnapping, Alana woke at 3 a.m. to find his side of the bed empty. She found him in his study, laptop open, face illuminated by blue light. "Can't sleep?" she'd asked. He'd closed the laptop quickly. "Just work." At 3 in the morning? The Japanese markets open early. He was lying. She knew it the way you know rain before it falls. A pressure in the air, something waiting to break. "Who is she?" Alana had asked quietly. Sang-hoon went very still. "Who?" "The woman watching me. The woman texting you. The ghost you said you left behind." For a long moment he said nothing. Then, "Someone I used to know. Someone who's having trouble accepting that I've moved on." "Is she dangerous?"
No.
You hesitated. "Alana, don't." She'd placed her hand on her belly, their daughter, already kicking at odd hours like her father. "Don't lie to me about this." He'd crossed the room then, kneeling beside her chair despite his expensive suit, despite his dignity, despite everything. His hands covered hers on her belly. "I will never let anything happen to you," he'd said. "Or to her. That's not a promise. It's a fact." "Then tell me what's going on." "I'm handling it." She'd wanted to scream. Instead, she'd gone back to bed. That was 13 days ago. Now, as the car carrying her body and her baby sped through Seoul traffic, Alana understood something she should have grasped earlier. Sang-hoon had been handling it, just not the way she thought. And as the tape sealed her screams and her belly cramped with stress and fear, she realized something else. When a man as careful as Sang-hoon does nothing, it's not because he's powerless. It's because he's already 10 steps ahead. Park Ji-woo hadn't planned to become a ghost. 20 years ago, she'd been flesh and blood and ambition. A 23-year-old woman in a man's world, willing to do whatever it took to carve out her piece of it. That's when she met Sang-hoon. Back then, he wasn't the composed businessman in tailored suits. He was hungry, sharp-edged, dangerous in the way young men with nothing to lose often are. He ran money for people who didn't ask questions. He brokered deals that existed in the margins of legality. He built his fortune in shadows. And Ji-woo helped him. Not as an assistant, not as arm candy, as an equal. She'd had the connections he needed, family ties to old money, relationships with government officials who could be persuaded. He'd had the vision and the ruthlessness to execute. Together, they were unstoppable. They weren't lovers, not in the traditional sense. Sex happened occasionally, pragmatically, like a business handshake after a successful deal. What they had was deeper than romance. They understood each other. They spoke the same language of power. For 7 years, they built an empire. Real estate in Gangnam before it exploded. Private equity investments that returned 40% annually. Nightclubs, restaurants, construction contracts, all legitimate on paper, all connected to networks that operated just left of legal. Ji-woo was the spider at the center of the web, pulling strings, making introductions, ensuring favors were owed and called in at precisely the right moments. Sang-hoon was the face, charming when needed, cold when necessary, always calculating the next 3 moves ahead. They never discussed marriage. Neither wanted the liability. But somewhere in year 6, Ji-woo made a mistake. She started to believe they were permanent. The end came quietly. No explosión. No betrayal. Just a conversation over expensive whiskey in his office. "I'm out," Sang-hoon had said. Ji-woo set down her glass. "Out of what?" "This. All of it." He gestured vaguely at the office, the view, the life. "I've made enough. I want something different." "Different how?" "Legal. Clean. Simple." She'd laughed. Actually laughed. "You think you can just walk away?" "I think I have to. People don't leave this world, Sang-hoon. They die in it or they get destroyed by it. Those are the only exits. Then I'll be the exception." He'd started divesting immediately, selling off the questionable assets, cutting ties with dangerous partners, restructuring everything into boring, legitimate businesses. Within a year, he was clean. And alone. Ji-woo hadn't fought him. That wasn't her style. She'd simply continued, took over the networks he'd abandoned, expanded into territories he'd left behind. If he wanted out, fine. She'd thrive without him. But then came the wedding announcement. Sang-hoon, controlled, calculating, cold Sang-hoon, was marrying an American schoolteacher. A woman with no connections, no power, no understanding of the world they'd built. Ji-woo attended the engagement party uninvited, standing at the back of the restaurant, watching this woman, Alana, laugh at something Sang-hoon said. She saw the way he looked at her. Not with the calculation he'd given Ji-woo. Not with the assessment of utility. With softness. It was revolting. And when the pregnancy was announced, something inside Ji-woo crystallized into a sharp, cold point. He'd replaced her. Not just with a woman, but with a family. With normalcy. With everything Ji-woo had never offered because she'd thought they were beyond such pedestrian needs. She didn't want him back. That ship had sailed and sunk. What she wanted was acknowledgement. She wanted him to admit that leaving hadn't made him better. It had made him weak. That this life he'd built on stability and love and gentle domesticity was a lie. That he was still the man who'd brokered deals in back rooms and made people disappear when they became problems. She wanted to remind him who he really was. The plan formed slowly over months of watching. She learned Alana's schedule. Pilates on Tuesdays. Shopping on Thursdays. Doctor's appointments every other Wednesday. She learned the routes they walked, the cafes they frequented, the life they'd built in their bubble of safety. She made her presence known gradually. A glimpse here, a message there. Enough to make Alana nervous. Enough to make Sang-hoon aware. She knew he'd know it was her. They'd worked together too long for him not to recognize her methods. And she knew he'd try to handle it quietly. That was his tell, his weakness masked as strength. Sang-hoon believed that if he controlled the situation perfectly, orchestrated every variable, he could prevent chaos. But chaos is what happens when two perfect plans collide. The kidnapping wasn't about ransom. It wasn't about revenge. It was about breaking his illusion. When Ji-woo grabbed Alana on that street, when she saw Sang-hoon standing there, watching, calculating, deciding, she felt vindicated. See, she thought, you're still him. Still the man who weighs options instead of feeling them. Still the man who chooses strategy over instinct. The fear in Alana's eyes as the car door closed was collateral damage. What Ji-woo wanted was the look in Sang-hoon's eyes afterward, the admission that he couldn't escape what he'd been. That peace was a fiction. That men like them didn't get happy endings with white picket fences and nurseries with hand-painted stars. She had Alana driven to a warehouse in Seong-sudong. Not the kind of place with chains and darkness, but an art space she owned, converted from an old factory. Clean, cold, echoing. Alana sat in a leather chair, hands zip-tied in front of her, tape still over her mouth, belly rising and falling with panicked breaths. Ji-woo sat across from her and smiled. Don't worry, she said. This isn't about hurting you. It's about reminding your husband that some people can't be protected. She checked her watch. He should be here in about 4 hours. What Ji-woo didn't know, couldn't know, was that Sang-hoon wasn't coming. He was doing something far worse. The witnesses who saw Lim Sang-hoon walk away from his pregnant wife's kidnapping would later describe him as in shock or paralyzed by fear. Police investigators would write in their reports that he exhibited trauma response, freeze state. They were all wrong. Sang-hoon returned to his car with the measured pace of a man who'd just finished lunch. He sat in the driver's seat, door closed, and pulled out his phone. He didn't call the police. He didn't call his security team. He opened his banking app. 4 transactions, executed in 90 seconds. Froze a line of credit tied to a Seong-sudong property. Transferred signatory authority on 3 shell companies. Called in a loan to a construction firm in Gangbuk. Sold shares in a logistics company. To anyone watching the numbers move, it would look like routine financial management. To the 12 people who depended on those accounts for their livelihood, it was an earthquake. Then he made a phone call. It's happening, he said when the line connected. You're sure? The voice on the other end belonged to Prosecutor Kim Min-jae, a man who'd been waiting 3 years for this call. She took Alana. Public street. Witnesses. That's bold even for her. That's desperate, Sang-hoon corrected. She's been losing ground for months. This was supposed to be her power move. And you let it happen. It wasn't a question. I let her think she was in control, Sang-hoon said quietly. There's a difference. He ended the call and sat in silence for exactly 2 minutes. Not in shock, not in grief, but in the forced stillness of a man who just set a plan in motion that couldn't be stopped. Then he started the car and drove. Not toward the warehouse, not toward help, toward his office. For hours earlier, Sang-hoon had known this was coming. Not the specifics, not the exact time or method, but the inevitability. Ji-woo had been escalating for weeks. The watching, the messages, the subtle threats. She was a woman who'd never learned to accept loss, and Sang-hoon had taken everything that mattered to her. Their partnership, their empire, their shared language of power. When he left that world, he'd known she wouldn't follow. Ji-woo didn't do simple. She didn't do safe. But he'd underestimated how long she'd let him live in peace before demanding acknowledgement. 3 weeks ago, his private investigator had confirmed what he'd suspected. Ji-woo was losing her grip. The networks they'd built together were fracturing. New players were taking territory. Old allies were switching sides. She was still powerful, still dangerous, but vulnerable in ways she'd never been when they worked together. That's when Sang-hoon had made his decision. He could protect Alana the obvious way, hire security, move them somewhere remote, live in constant vigilance. Or he could end it, not with violence. He'd left that behind, with precision. When Prosecutor Kim had approached him 2 years ago about testifying against Ji-woo's network, Sang-hoon had refused. Too dangerous, too many connections, too much risk to Alana. But now, with Alana pregnant, with Ji-woo escalating, with time running out, he'd agreed to cooperate, with conditions. I won't testify publicly, he'd told Kim. I won't take the stand, but I'll give you everything, accounts, names, transactions, recordings, everything you need to dismantle her network from the inside. And in exchange, immunity, complete, for me and my family. That's a big ask for a man who helped build what we're tearing down. Then consider it this way, Sang-hoon had said coldly. Without me, you spend 5 years chasing shadows and maybe arrest 3 mid-level operators. With me, you can take down an entire network in 6 months. Kim had agreed, but Sang-hoon had added one more condition. She has to move first. What? Evil. She has to commit an act that's undeniable, public, impossible to hide or explain away. Until then, she's smart enough to see arrests coming and disappear. So you want to use your wife as bait. Sang-hoon's jaw had tightened. I want my wife safe. The only way to guarantee that permanently is to remove the threat completely. And the only way to do that is to let Ji-woo think she's winning. That's a hell of a risk. It's a calculated one. And if the calculation is wrong?
Sang-hoon a denté en suerde.
Because the truth was, he didn't know what he'd do if he was wrong. Now, sitting in his office as the sun set over Seoul, Sang-hoon pulled out a burner phone and sent a single text to a number he'd never called before. Green light. She has her. Execute. Across the city, Prosecutor Kim Min-jae put down his coffee and lifted his radio. All units go. In 12 locations simultaneously, doors opened. Not with battering rams or dramatic raids. Ji-woo's network was too sophisticated for that. These were quiet entries with warrants signed by judges who owed Kim favors, executed by officers who specialized in financial crimes. They seized computers, files, ledgers, phones, safety deposit boxes. Every piece of evidence Sang-hoon had spent 3 years compiling, now corroborated by the physical evidence being collected in real time. And because Ji-woo was currently occupied holding a pregnant woman against her will, because she'd finally made the bold, public, undeniable move that Sang-hoon had been waiting for, she didn't know her empire was being dismantled around her. By the time she realized what was happening, it would be too late. Sang-hoon looked at his phone. No calls from Ji-woo yet, which meant she still thought she was in control. Good. He opened his messages and typed one to Alana, knowing she couldn't read it yet, knowing the police would find it later. I love you. I'm sorry. This was the only way. He didn't send it. Instead, he deleted it and stood up. He had one more call to make. To the one person who could reach Alana before Jiwoo realized the trap she'd walked into. Alana's hands were shaking. Not from fear, though fear was there, cold and heavy in her chest, but from rage. She sat in the leather chair in Jiwoo's pristine warehouse-turned-art space, watching this woman in her crimson suit pace like a panther in a cage, and Alana wanted to scream, not for help.
At Sang-hoon.
The tape had been removed 20 minutes ago. Jiwoo didn't need it anymore. There was no one to hear her scream here. The warehouse was soundproofed, isolated, perfect in its sterile emptiness. You're angry, Jiwoo observed, sitting down across from her. What gave it away? Alana's voice was hoarse. Your eyes. You're not scared. You're furious. My husband watched you kidnap me and did nothing. Alana's hands went to her belly, feeling the baby shift restlessly inside her. So yes,
I'm fucking furious.
Jiwoo smiled. A real smile, not the cold one she'd worn on the street. Good. You should be. What do you want from me? Nothing. You're not the point. Then why? You're the message. Jiwoo leaned forward, elbows on her knees, posture almost casual. Everything Sang-hoon built with me, everything he became because of me, he's trying to pretend it didn't exist. That he's someone new. Someone better. He is better.
No.
Jiwoo's voice went cold. He's the same man with better curtains. And I'm going to remind him. Alana stared at her. This woman was beautiful, objectively, undeniably beautiful. But there was something hollow behind her eyes, like looking into a house where no one lived anymore. Did you love him? Alana asked quietly. The question seemed to catch Jiwoo off guard. What?
Sang-hoon.
Did you love him? For a long moment, Jiwoo said nothing. Then, I understood him, which is more valuable than love. Is it? Love is a liability. Understanding is leverage. Alana felt the baby kick. Hard, almost angry, as if responding to the coldness in the room. She winced.
You've noticed.
When are you due? For weeks. Girl or boy? Girl. Something flickered across Jiwoo's face. Too quick to name. He'll be a terrible father. You don't know that. I know him better than you ever will. You knew who he was, Alana corrected. Not who he is. Jiwoo laughed. A sharp, bitter sound. You think he's changed? You think leaving that life behind made him a different person? I think people can choose who they want to be.
No.
People can choose who they want to pretend to be. But when pressure comes, when stakes get real, they revert. Jiwoo gestured toward the door. And what did your husband do when the stakes got real? When you, his pregnant wife, were being taken by force in front of witnesses? Alana couldn't answer, because Jiwoo was right. He stood there, Jiwoo continued, calculating, deciding. That's who he is, Alana. That's who he's always been. A man who weighs outcomes instead of feeling them. Maybe he had a reason. Of course he had a reason. Sang-hoon always has reasons. Beautiful, logical reasons that sound like wisdom but feel like abandonment. The words hit harder than Alana wanted to admit. Because in the 3 years she'd known him, she'd seen it. The way Sang-hoon could turn emotion off like a light switch. The way he could watch her cry and respond with calm logic instead of comfort. The way he solved problems instead of sharing them. She'd told herself it was strength. Now, sitting here with his ex-partner while carrying his child, she wondered if it was just distance. He's probably looking for you right now, Jiwoo said, checking her phone. Panicking, calling in favors, maybe even calling the police. And then what? Then he shows up here, desperate and afraid, and remembers what it feels like to lose control. Jiwoo's smile was cruel. I want to see him break, just once, just so I know he's human. And after that, I let you go. I'm not a monster, Alana. I'm just a woman reminding a man of who he used to be. Alana looked at her hands, swollen from pregnancy, trembling from adrenaline. Then she looked at Ji-woo. You're wrong about him, she said quietly. Am I? You think he's the same person because he's still calm under pressure. But calm doesn't mean cold, and control doesn't mean he doesn't care. It means exactly that.
No.
Alana leaned forward despite the zip ties biting into her wrists. It means he cares so much that he can't afford to fall apart. Because if he does, the people he loves pay the price. Ji-woo's expression flickered. You want to see him break? Alana continued. You want proof he feels something? You're looking in the wrong place. Sang-hoon doesn't break in front of enemies. He breaks in private. In the spaces where no one's watching except the people who matter. And how would you know? Because I've seen it. Alana's voice softened. 3 months ago, at our last ultrasound, when the doctor showed us our daughter's heartbeat, he waited until we got to the car. Then he cried. Not much. Just enough. And when I asked him why, he said, because something this good shouldn't be possible for someone like me. For the first time since the kidnapping began, Ji-woo looked uncertain. That's the man you're trying to break, Alana said. A man who thinks he doesn't deserve happiness but fights like hell to protect it anyway. So go ahead. Wait for him to show up desperate and afraid. But I promise you, you won't like what you find.
Ivo stood abruptly.
He's not coming. What? He's not coming? She repeated, looking at her phone. It's been over 4 hours. If he was desperate, he'd be here by now. If he'd called the police, they'd be here by now. She turned to face Alana. Which means he's doing something else. Like what? Ji-woo's face went very still. Something worse. By the time Ji-woo realized what was happening, it was already over. The first message came at 8:47 p.m. Park Ji-woo. This is Prosecutor Kim Min-jae. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of kidnapping, extortion, money laundering, and conspiracy. You have 24 hours to turn yourself in voluntarily. She stared at the text. Then came the second message, a photo of her office, empty with case files scattered across her desk. Then the third, her accountant's office, similarly ransacked. Then the fourth, fifth, sixth, her empire, documented and dismantled in real time. No, she whispered. She called her lawyer. Voicemail. Her accountant. No answer. Her business partner in Busan. The line was disconnected. One by one, every connection she'd spent 2 decades building went dark. And then she understood.
Son.
She said his name like a curse. Across from her, Alana watched with growing realization. What's happening? Ji-woo ignored her, scrolling through her phone with increasing panic. Bank accounts frozen. Properties seized. Contracts voided. 3 years. He'd been planning this for 3 years. Every quiet exit, every business he'd divested, every bridge he'd burned. It hadn't been retirement. It had been preparation. He'd spent 3 years gathering evidence, building a case, setting up every domino exactly right. And then he'd waited for her to make a move bold enough, public enough, undeniable enough that prosecutors would have no choice but to act. You let this happen, Ji-woo said, turning to Alana. He let me take you because he knew I would. He needed me to. I don't understand. He used you as bait. Ji-woo's voice rose. He stood there and watched me kidnap you because it was the one thing I could do that would be impossible to hide or explain away. Kidnapping a pregnant woman in broad daylight, on a busy street, with witnesses. She laughed. A wild, broken sound. That's not something you can make disappear with money or connections. That's public. That's undeniable. That's exactly what he needed to justify bringing my entire network down. Alana felt cold. He wouldn't. He absolutely would. Ji-woo was pacing now, phone still pressed to her ear as another call went unanswered. Because that's who Sang-hoon is. He doesn't get emotional. He doesn't get reckless. He gets even. And he does it so cleanly, so precisely, that you don't realize you've lost until it's already over. She threw her phone across the room. It shattered against the concrete wall. For a long moment, the warehouse was silent except for Alana's labored breathing and Ji-woo's ragged gasps. "Let me go," Alana said quietly. "What? Let me go. Now, before this gets worse."
Ivo left.
"Worse? Can't get worse. He's already destroyed everything." "Not everything. You're still free. You haven't been arrested yet. If you let me go now, if you disappear." "Disappear where? With what money? To what country?" Ji-woo shook her head. "He thought of that too. I promise you, every account, every asset, every escape route I might have, he's already closed it." "Then what are you going to do?" For the first time, Ji-woo looked lost. Not angry, not calculating, just lost. "I don't know." And that's when the door opened. Not Sang-hoon, not the police. A woman in her 60s, elegant in a gray suit, walked in like she owned the place, which, as it turned out, she did. "Ms. Park," she said calmly. "My name is Attorney Lee Sunhwa. Mr. Lim asked me to deliver a message." Ji-woo's face went white. "Get out. He wanted you to know that this didn't have to happen. That if you'd let him walk away 3 years ago, if you'd accepted that he was building a different life, none of this would have been necessary." "Necessary?" Ji-woo's voice shook. "He destroyed me." "No," Attorney Lee corrected. "He removed the protection you enjoyed while you destroyed yourself. Every crime you're being charged with, you committed. Every illegal transaction, you authorized. He simply stopped covering for you. I never asked him to. You didn't have to. That's what partners do. They protect each other." Lee's voice softened slightly. "But you stopped being partners the moment you threatened what he loves." Ji-woo looked at Alana. Still tied to the chair, still pregnant, still impossibly present in this moment that had nothing to do with her and everything to do with her. "He doesn't love," Ji-woo whispered. "He calculates." "Perhaps," Lee said. "But he calculates in favor of the people who matter to him. And you, Ms. Park, you stopped mattering the moment you chose revenge over acceptance." She walked over to Alana and cut the zip ties with a small knife. "Are you hurt?" she asked gently. Alana shook her head, rubbing her wrists. "The baby. There's an ambulance waiting outside." Mr. Lim insisted. "He's here."
No.
Lee helped Alana stand. He thought it would be better if he wasn't, given the circumstances. Alana looked back at Ji-woo. This woman who'd kidnapped her, threatened her, hated her husband with the intensity of someone who'd never learned to let go. She looked small now, diminished. "I'm sorry," Alana said quietly. "For what?" "That you loved him in the only way you knew how, and that it wasn't enough." Ji-woo's face crumpled, just for a second, before she rebuilt it into cold composure. "Get out." Lee guided Alana toward the door. As they reached it, Ji-woo called out, "Does he regret it?" Alana turned. "Regret what?" "Leaving me behind, building this new life. Does he ever regret walking away?" Alana thought about the man who cried in parking lots and painted stars on nursery ceilings. The man who held her hand through ultrasounds and read parenting books like they were scripture. The man who'd watched her get kidnapped and done nothing, because doing nothing was the only way to do everything. "No," she said finally. "I don't think he does." The door closed behind them. Inside the warehouse, Park Ji-woo sat alone in the empire she'd built and watched it crumble to nothing. Alana found him in the hospital parking garage. Not at the bedside where the doctors were checking her vitals, monitoring the baby's heartbeat, running tests to make sure the stress hadn't triggered early labor. Not in the waiting room where Attorney Lee was fielding calls from police and prosecutors. In the parking garage, sitting in his car, staring at nothing. She tapped on the window. He flinched, an actual flinch like he'd been struck, and turned to see her standing there in a hospital gown, for still taped to her arm, belly round and unmistakable under the thin fabric. He got out of the car slowly. For 5 seconds, neither of them spoke. "The baby's fine," Alana said.
I'm fine.
In case you were wondering. I was. His voice sounded hollow. Were you? The anger she'd been holding back. Through the kidnapping, through the warehouse, through Attorney Lee's careful explanations, finally surfaced. Because from where I stood, Sang-hoon, you looked pretty comfortable watching me get shoved into a car. Alana.
No.
She stepped closer. You don't get to explain yet. You get to listen. He closed his mouth. 8 months pregnant, she continued, her voice shaking. Tape over my mouth. Hands tied. Terrified for our daughter. And you stood there like you were waiting for a fucking bus. I know. Do you? Do you know what it feels like to look at the person you love and realize they're choosing something else? Something more important. You were never less important. Then what was? Her voice broke. What was worth watching that happen? Sang-hoon leaned back against the car, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked tired. Not physically, emotionally. Like he'd been carrying something heavy for so long that putting it down had left him hollow. Ending it, he said quietly. Permanently. So it would never happen again. You used me as bait. Yes. The admission hit harder than a denial would have. You planned this, Alana continued. For how long? 3 years. She felt dizzy. 3 years? Since before we.
No.
He looked up sharply. Not before us. Because of us. I started planning this because I knew that if I didn't, she'd never stop. And eventually, she'd hurt you to hurt me. So you hurt me first. I protected you the only way I knew how. By letting me get kidnapped? By making sure that when it happened, and it was going to happen, Alana, she was escalating. It would be the last thing she could ever do to us. Alana pressed her palms against her belly, feeling their daughter move restlessly. You could have told me. No, I couldn't. Why not? Because if you'd known, you would have tried to stop it. Or you would have been too scared to leave the house. Or you would have looked at Jiwoo differently when she approached you, and she would have sensed it. So you let me be terrified instead. Yes, the honesty was brutal. I made a choice, Sang-hoon continued, between telling you the truth and keeping you safe, between your trust and your security. And I chose security. That's not your choice to make. Yes, it is. His voice hardened slightly. You're carrying our daughter. You're my wife. Protecting you is exactly my choice to make. Even if it destroys us? That stopped him. Does it? He asked quietly. Destroy us? Alana didn't answer immediately, because she didn't know. Part of her wanted to scream at him, to tell him that trust matters, that partnership means sharing the burden, that watching her get kidnapped was unforgivable. But another part, a part she hated acknowledging, understood. She'd seen Jiwoo in that warehouse. Seen the obsession, the bitterness, the refusal to let go. That woman would have kept coming. Forever. Until she won or until something stopped her. Sang-hoon had stopped her. But the cost? I don't know, Alana said finally. I don't know if I can forgive this. I'm not asking you to forgive it. He pushed off the car and stepped closer. Not touching her, just closer. I'm asking you to understand it. Understanding doesn't fix what you did.
No.
But it's a start. She looked up at him. This man she'd married. This man she'd chosen. This man who'd just proven that his love was strategic instead of instinctive. If you ever do something like this again, she said slowly, if you ever decide what's best for me without telling me, if you ever watch something happen to me because you think you're playing a longer game, I will leave. Do you understand? Yes. I mean it, Sang-hoon. I'll take our daughter and I'll disappear and you'll never see either of us again. I understand. Good. She turned toward the hospital entrance. Alana. She stopped but didn't turn around. I'm sorry, he said. I'm sorry it hurt. I'm sorry you were scared. I'm sorry I couldn't find a better way. I know, she said quietly. But I'd do it again. She turned then. What? If the choice was between hurting you temporarily and losing you permanently, I'd do it again. Every time. It was the worst possible thing he could have said. And somehow it was also what she needed to hear. because it meant he was still the man she'd married, calculating, strategic, impossible to predict. But underneath all that control was something he protected so fiercely that he'd sacrifice anything for it, including her trust. I need time, Alana said. I know. I need to know you won't do this again. I won't. How do I know that? For the first time, Sang-hoon smiled. A small, sad thing. Because there's nothing left to protect you from. Jiwoo's gone. That world's gone. It's just us now. Just us, she repeated. And our daughter. Alana put her hand on her belly. Their daughter kicked. Hard, insistent, demanding to be acknowledged. She's going to have questions, Alana said. When she's older. About what kind of man her father is. What will you tell her? The truth. Alana walked back toward the hospital. That you're a man who loves imperfectly but completely. And that's both the best and worst thing about you. Jiwoo was arrested at the warehouse 6 hours after Alana left. She didn't run. Didn't fight. Just sat in that leather chair waiting. When the police arrived, she stood calmly, hands out for the cuffs, face composed. Park Jiwoo, you're under arrest for kidnapping, extortion, money laundering. The charges went on for 2 minutes. She didn't listen. She was thinking about something Alana had said. I'm sorry you loved him in the only way you knew how, and that it wasn't enough. The trial took 8 months. By then, Alana had given birth to a daughter with Sang-hoon's eyes and her mother's stubbornness. They named her Min-seo, meaning bright and noble. Sang-hoon didn't attend the trial. He'd given his deposition remotely, provided every document prosecutors needed, and then stepped back completely. I'm done with that life, he told Alana. Permanently. Are you sure? Yes. Because there's a difference between being done and being done. One is a decision. The other is a wound. He'd looked at their daughter, sleeping in his arms, and said, It's a decision. Alana wanted to believe him. The verdict came back on a Tuesday. Guilty on all counts. 47 years. Jiwoo showed no emotion as the sentence was read. One reporter asked if she wanted to make a statement. No, she said simply. But as she was led away, she turned to look at the gallery, scanning faces until she found Attorney Lee, who'd been observing the proceedings for Sang-hoon. Their eyes met. Jiwoo mouthed 3 words. Tell him goodbye. 3 months after the trial, Alana woke at 2 a.m. to an empty bed. She found Sang-hoon in Min-seo's nursery, sitting in the rocking chair, watching their daughter sleep. Can't sleep? She asked softly. Didn't want to. She sat on the floor beside the chair, leaning her head against his knee. Want to talk about it? Not really. They sat in silence for a while, the kind of silence that had weight but not pressure. Do you regret it? Alana finally asked. Which part? Any of it. Leaving that life. Turning on Jiwoo. Using me as bait. Any of it. He was quiet for a long time. I regret hurting you, he said eventually. I regret that you had to be afraid. But the actual decision, protecting you by removing the threat permanently, no. I don't regret that. Even though it cost you Jiwoo, she was already gone. That relationship ended 3 years ago. She just refused to accept it. Maybe. Alana traced patterns on his knee. Or maybe she loved you in the only way she knew how, and you loved her back the same way. What does that mean? It means you both loved power and control and winning. And when you chose something different, chose me, chose this, it broke her. Because she couldn't understand choosing peace over power. Sang-hoon looked down at Min-seo, tiny and perfect and unaware of everything that had been sacrificed to protect her existence. Is that what I did? He asked. Choose peace over power? Didn't you? I don't know. Maybe I just chose different power. The power to protect instead of dominate. That's still a choice. He nodded slowly. Yeah, it is. Min-seo stirred, making small sounds. Sang-hoon reached down and gently rocked the bassinet. I never told you this, he said quietly. But 3 weeks before the kidnapping, Jiwoo sent me a letter. No threats. No demands. Just memory. What kind of memory? A job we'd done together 7 years ago. High stakes, complicated, dangerous. We'd pulled it off perfectly. And at the end, we'd sat in my old office drinking expensive scotch. And she'd said, "We're unstoppable." Were you? For a while, yeah. We were. He paused. In the letter, she said she missed that feeling. Being unstoppable. And she said that watching me try to be normal was like watching a lion try to be a house cat. What did you say? Nothing. I didn't respond. But it bothered you. Yeah. He looked at Alana. Because part of me wondered if she was right. If I was pretending to be something I'm not. And now I know she was wrong. He gestured to the nursery, the hand-painted stars, the books on parenting, the tiny clothes folded carefully in drawers. This isn't less than what I was. It's different. Maybe harder. Definitely more terrifying. Why? Because when you're unstoppable, you don't have anything to lose. When you're a father, a husband, when you have people who matter more than you do, you have everything to lose. Every decision has stakes. Every risk has consequences. Alana stood and kissed the top of his head. Welcome to being human. Is that what this is? Yeah. She smiled. That's exactly what this is. 5 years later, Mincio asked her first real question about her father's past. They were driving to her kindergarten when she said, "Emma's dad was in the army. He has medals." "That's nice," Sang-hoon said, eyes on the road. "What did you do before you were a dad?" Alana, in the passenger seat, tensed. Sang-hoon caught her eye. She nodded slightly. "Your call." "I worked in business," he said simply. "What kind?" "The kind where I made a lot of money but wasn't very happy." "Why weren't you happy?" "Because money doesn't make you happy. People do." "Like mommy?" "Exactly like mommy. And like you." "Oh." Mincio went back to her coloring book. Crisis averted. For now. Later, Alana knew there would be harder questions. Questions about why they didn't have extended family. Questions about her father's past. Questions about a woman named Park Ji-woo who'd be released from prison when Mincio was in her 20s. But for now, in this car, driving to kindergarten on a sunny Tuesday morning, they were just a family. Imperfect. Complicated. Haunted by decisions that had been necessary but not painless. But still together. "Sang-hoon," Alana said softly. "Yeah. I forgive you." He glanced at her sharply. "For what?" "All of it. The silence. The calculation. Using me as bait." She put her hand over his on the gear shift. "I forgive you." "Why now?" "Because I finally understand what you protected. Not just me. Not just Mincio. But the chance to be normal. To be small. To be happy in ways that don't require power or control." Sang-hoon's throat worked. "Thank you. Just don't make me regret it." "I won't." In the back seat, Mincio sang softly to herself, unaware that her existence was built on a foundation of choices her father had made before she was born. Choices that were both right and wrong. Heroic and selfish. Protective and painful. Choices that couldn't be undone, only understood. 10 years after the kidnapping, Sang-hoon received a letter. It arrived in a plain envelope, no return address, postmarked from the Cheongju Women's Correctional Institute. He knew who it was from before he opened it. "Is that from her?" Alana asked, watching him turn the envelope over in his hands. "Yes. Are you going to read it?" "I don't know. Do you want to?" That was the real question. Did he want to hear from Ji-woo after a decade of silence? Did he want to know if she'd changed, if prison had softened her, if she still hated him or had finally made peace with what happened? "I don't think want is the right word," he said carefully. "But I think I need to." "Why?" "Because she was part of my life for a long time, and I never said goodbye." "You put her in prison for 47 years, Sang-hoon. That's a pretty definitive goodbye." "Maybe." He set the letter on the kitchen table. But it wasn't closure. Not really. Alana was quiet for a moment. Then, "Read it if you want. But remember, you don't owe her anything. Not forgiveness. Not understanding. Not even your attention. I know. Good. She left him alone in the kitchen. Sang-hoon stared at the envelope for another 5 minutes before finally opening it. The letter was 3 pages, handwritten in Ji-woo's precise script.
Son.
I'm not supposed to write to you. My lawyer advised against it. The prison psychiatrist said it would be counterproductive to my rehabilitation. But I've never been good at following advice that doesn't serve me, so here we are. I've had 10 years to think about what happened. 10 years to replay every decision, every conversation, every moment that led to me sitting in a cell while you raised a daughter in a house I'll never see. First, I was angry. Genuinely, consumingly angry. I thought you'd betrayed me, used our history against me, weaponized everything I taught you and turned it into my own destruction. I spent the first 2 years planning revenge. Ridiculous, isn't it? Planning revenge from a prison cell. But it gave me something to focus on besides the fact that I'd lost everything. Around year 3, the anger faded into something worse. Emptiness. Because I realized that even if I got out, even if I had the chance to hurt you the way you hurt me, I wouldn't take it. Not because I forgave you. Not because I understood why you did what you did. But because I finally realized something fundamental. You didn't destroy me. I destroyed myself. Every choice that led to that warehouse, to that moment with Alana, to the kidnapping that gave you the ammunition you needed, those were my choices, not yours. You didn't make me refuse to let go. You didn't make me escalate when you tried to walk away peacefully. You didn't make me believe that hurting your wife would somehow prove that you still belonged to the world we'd built together. I did that. All of it. And the hardest part, the part that took me 7 years to admit, is that you were right to stop me. Not because I was evil. I don't think I was evil. But because I was dangerous. And not just to you or Alana, but to myself. I'd built my entire identity around power and control and winning. And when you chose to step away from that, when you chose something I couldn't understand or respect, I took it as a personal betrayal. But it wasn't about me at all, was it? You weren't leaving me. You were leaving that life. And I just happened to be so embedded in it that I couldn't see the difference. I've spent the last 3 years reading. Philosophy, mostly. Buddhism. Stoicism. That kind of thing. The guards think it's funny, Park Ji-woo, who used to run half of Gangnam's underground economy, reading Marcus Aurelius. But I've learned something. Attachment is suffering. I was attached to you in a way that had nothing to do with love. I was attached to the version of us that felt unstoppable. Attached to the power we wielded together. Attached to the idea that we were too smart, too ruthless, too perfectly matched to ever separate. And when you proved me wrong, when you showed me that people can choose to be different, I couldn't handle it. So I tried to drag you back. To remind you of who you used to be. To prove that your new life was a fiction. And you know what? Maybe it was a fiction. Maybe you're still the same calculating, strategic person you were when we worked together. But so what? Maybe the point isn't becoming a completely different person. Maybe it's deciding what you'll calculate for. What you'll strategize toward. You calculated for Alana's safety. For your daughter's future. For a life that didn't require looking over your shoulder. I calculated for revenge. For pride. For the satisfaction of proving I was right. One of us built something. The other destroyed everything. I'm not writing this for forgiveness. I don't expect that, and I'm not sure I deserve it. I'm writing because I wanted you to know that I understand now. I understand why you did what you did. I understand why it had to be that way. And I'm sorry. Not for being who I was. I'm not ashamed of the empire we built or the things we accomplished. But I'm sorry for refusing to let you be who you wanted to become. I hope Alana is well. I hope your daughter is brilliant and stubborn and nothing like either of us. And I hope, genuinely hope, that you found whatever it was you were looking for when you walked away. I'm eligible for parole in 27 years. If I get it, I'll be 73 years old. By then, you'll be 77. Your daughter will be 37. The world we knew will be gone. I don't expect to see you. I don't expect to be part of your life in any way. But if, by some impossible chance, our paths cross again, I'll say the thing I should have said 10 years ago.
Goodbye, Sohn.
And thank you. Thank you for the years we had. Thank you for teaching me what power felt like. And thank you for teaching me eventually what it costs.
Ivo.
Sang-hoon read the letter 3 times. Then he folded it carefully, put it back in the envelope and walked to his study. He pulled out a piece of paper and wrote one sentence. I hope you find peace. He didn't sign it. He sealed it, addressed it to the prison and left it on his desk. He didn't mail it for 2 weeks. When he finally did, Alana asked, What did you say? That I hope she finds peace. Do you mean it? He thought about it. Really thought about it. Yeah, he said finally.
Ido.
On Minseo's 18th birthday, Sang-hoon took her to the roof of the building where he used to have his office. The one from his old life, before Alana, before domesticity, before peace. The building was different now. Renovated, modernized, filled with tech startups instead of the kind of businesses that operated in moral gray zones. But the view was the same. Seoul spread out below them. Lights glittering, traffic flowing, millions of lives intersecting in patterns too complex to predict. Why are we here? Minseo asked. She'd grown into a thoughtful young woman. Her father's composure, her mother's warmth, and a stubbornness that was entirely her own. Because you're old enough now, Sang-hoon said. Old enough for the truth. About what? About who I was before you were born. Minseo went very still. She'd asked questions over the years. Kids always do. But her parents had deflected, delayed, promised when you're older. Now she was older. I'm not going to lie to you, Sang-hoon continued, and I'm not going to sanitize it. You deserve the truth, even if it's ugly. Okay, she said quietly. So he told her. Not everything. Some details weren't hers to carry, but the essential truth, that he'd built his fortune in morally questionable ways. That he'd had a partner who'd understood him in ways Alana never would. That he'd walked away from that life because he'd wanted something different. That his past had come back for revenge. That he'd used her mother as bait to end it permanently. You let Mom get kidnapped, Minseo said when he finished. Yes. On purpose. Yes. So the woman you used to work with would expose herself and you could destroy her. Yes. Minseo looked out at the city. That's fucked up, Dad. I know. Does Mom know? I mean, really know. She knows. We've talked about it. Many times. And she stayed with you? Eventually. It took time. Why? That was the question, wasn't it? The one Sang-hoon had asked himself 1,000 times in the years since. Because she understood something I took a long time to learn, he said slowly. That people aren't defined by their worst decision. They're defined by what they do after. And what did you do after? I spent 18 years being your father, being your mother's husband, building a life that doesn't require looking over my shoulder. That's not redemption. I don't believe in redemption, but it's something. Minseo was quiet for a long time. Do you regret it? She finally asked. Hurting your mother? Yes, every day. But not the decision itself.
No.
Because it worked. Because it was the only way I could see to protect both of you permanently. What if it hadn't worked? What if Jiwoo had hurt Mom? Or me? Sang-hoon felt his chest tighten. Then I would have destroyed her anyway. And then I would have destroyed myself. The honesty hung in the air between them. I don't know if I can respect that, Minseo said quietly. Using someone you love as bait. I'm not asking you to respect it. I'm asking you to understand that love isn't always gentle. Sometimes it's strategic. Sometimes it's brutal. And sometimes the only way to protect people is to put them at risk first. That's a terrible philosophy. I know. But it's yours. It was, Sang-hoon corrected. Now it's just history, context for who I am. But not who I'm trying to be. Minseo turned to face him. And who are you trying to be? A better man than I was. A good father. Someone you're not ashamed of. Are you asking me if I'm ashamed of you?
No.
I'm telling you that I wouldn't blame you if you were. She considered that. I'm not ashamed. But I'm also not sure I understand you. That's fair. Mom says you're a man who loves imperfectly but completely. Is that true? Probably. Sang-hoon smiled slightly. Your mother has always been better with words than I am. She also said that when I was old enough to know the truth, I should ask you one specific question. Which is, if you had to make the same choice again, knowing everything you know now, including how much it hurt her, would you do it differently? Sang-hoon looked at his daughter, 18 years old, standing on the edge of her own life, trying to reconcile the father she knew with the man he used to be. No, he said honestly. I wouldn't, because the alternative was living with constant fear, constant vigilance, never knowing when Jiwoo might escalate. And I wasn't willing to raise you in that world. So you chose temporary pain over permanent fear. Exactly. That's very logical. Your mother says it's my greatest strength and my most frustrating weakness. Min-seo laughed. A real laugh, the kind that breaks tension like sunlight through clouds. She's not wrong, she said. They stood in silence for a while, watching the city breathe. Dad. Yeah. Thank you for telling me. Are we okay? I don't know yet. Ask me again in a few years. She paused. But I'm glad you trusted me with the truth. You deserve it. You've always deserved it. One more question. Anything. Do you think Jiwoo will come after us when she gets out? Sang-hoon had thought about this. Of course he had. No, he said. I think prison changed her. Or maybe just broke her. Either way, by the time she's eligible for parole, we'll be old and she'll be older. And whatever drove her to take your mother will be long dead. You sound very sure. I'm not sure of anything, but I'm hopeful. And hope is new for me. Min-seo smiled. Mom's influence? Completely. They left the roof as the sun set behind them, casting long shadows across the city that had witnessed everything. The empire, the betrayal, the kidnapping, the aftermath, and now, this fragile peace. 3 years later, Sang-hoon received news that Park Ji-woo had died in prison. Natural causes. Heart failure. He didn't attend the funeral. Neither did Alana. But that evening, sitting on their back porch while Min-seo visited from university, he raised a glass of expensive whiskey. The same kind they used to drink after successful deals, and said quietly,
Goodbye, Yevo-o.
Alana put her hand on his shoulder. Are you okay? Yeah. He meant it. I am. Good. Inside, Min-seo was on the phone with her girlfriend, laughing about something inconsequential and beautiful. Outside, the night was warm and the stars were visible despite the city lights. And for the first time in 21 years, Lim Sang-hoon felt completely free. Not from guilt, that would always remain, a weight he'd chosen to carry, but from fear, from the past, from the constant calculation of what might go wrong. I think I'm done with that life now, he said to Alana. Really done. You said that 20 years ago. I meant it then too. But now I believe it. What's the difference? He thought about it. Then I was running from something. Now I'm just here, present, with you, with Min-seo, with this life we built. It's a good life, Alana said. Yeah, Sang-hoon agreed. It really is. They sat in silence, hands linked, watching the night deepen around them. And somewhere in the city below, in hospitals and homes and street corners, millions of people made millions of choices. Some good, some bad, some irreversible. Just like Sang-hoon had. Just like Jiwoo had. Just like everyone does when they love imperfectly but completely. And try to protect what matters most, even when the cost is too high to calculate. If you made it this far, thank you. This story wasn't about heroism or villainy. It was about the impossible choices we make when loving someone means risking everything, including them. Sang-hoon wasn't right, but he wasn't entirely wrong either. Sometimes the people who love us most hurt us in ways that can't be undone, only understood. And sometimes, protection looks like betrayal until you're far enough away to see the whole picture. I hope this story made you think. I hope it made you uncomfortable. And I hope it made you ask the same question Sang-hoon asked himself for 20 years. If silence saves someone in the long run, what does it cost in the moment you choose it? And would you have stood still too? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe for more stories that ask difficult questions instead of offering easy answers. And if the story affected you, share it with someone who needs to think about what it means to love imperfectly but completely.